All right. So I'm not sure if you listen to our podcast, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you, and then I'm going to say, "Hey, Mr. Leland," and we're going to have a good time talking.
Okay, great.
All
Whatever
right.
you want to talk about, I'm good with you.
Sure. Sure. All right. Just let me fix a few things. So we're on just a minute. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So, hey everybody, welcome back to When Words Fail Music Speaks. I am your handicapped host, James Cox, and I'm so delighted today to do this interview with Mr. Leland Sklar. First, let me tell you about him. Leland Sklar has been around all around the world and then some. He has played bass for who's who in the music catalog industry, including but not limited to George Strait, Clint Black, Phil Collins, Steve Cohen, David Crosby, Neil Diamond, along with some many more artists. Leland is in the band entitled The Immediate Family, which has an album under the same name, The Immediate Family. Releasing on August 27th, 2021, in a few weeks, in which they are going to have a listening party at the Grammy Museum downtown Los Angeles before the release date and answer your questions about the album. We are thrilled to talk to him about his music and his life. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Leland Sklar. How are you doing, sir?
Man, James, I am so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to talking to you. So this is pretty cool. And one of the best things is one of the finest keyboard players I've ever worked with in Los Angeles. His name is Jim Cox.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
He's a staple of the LA studio scene and touring. He's toured with Lyle Lovett and different people. And he's amazing. So it's nice to meet another Jim Cox.
Nice. Yeah, because Cox is a very spread out name, because I haven't met a Cox besides my family in a while, because I know there's a hockey player named Cox, and that's all I know. You know, I'm just hockey in my family, so
Well,
it's good to have there.
There's Ronnie Cox too, the actor who was in Deliverance and all those movies, RoboCop. He's a fabulous actor. He's also a country artist. He lives out here in Southern California.
Right. Nice. Yeah. So we're just slowly getting out of this pandemic, hopefully. Has the pandemic ever slowed you down, like creating new music? Because I know you're home and you like to create stuff. So has it slowed you down at all, or what was it like
Yeah, what it did was it's like it didn't stop me, but it certainly put me on a lateral movement, because all the stuff that I had in my book that I was planning on doing all got canceled immediately upon, as of, March of last year. And I was sitting around suddenly looking for the first time in a half a century at an empty book. And so I just started to try to think of things I could do to make myself still feel viable and busy. And it's actually turned out to be like one of the busiest year and a halves I've ever spent. Now, a great deal of it was not income, so it wasn't like the work I would have had, but it was incredibly fulfilling, and I've felt very engaged all year. And fingers are crossed for the future. I mean, things start to get going, and then people go crazy, and then they have to back up again and stuff. So I just was watching the news, and they said Garth Brooks has just canceled the rest of his tour.
Oh no!
Yeah, he's had to do that, and some stuff I was supposed to be doing that was booked has now been canceled or postponed. So but in terms of during the course of this past year and a half, I did. I took the opportunity to do things that I would probably have never had the time to do, which one of them sitting over your right shoulder is this book. I also started kind of inadvertently, but started a YouTube channel. And so far I've got about 166,000 people on the channel. And I do a couple of live streams a month and a one-on-one day with people. We're doing Skype and FaceTimes with them. For the first time in my career, I've been recording at home. I was always in studios or at friends' studios and never felt the need to do it at home. And suddenly I found myself, locked up at home. And but it's been great. Today I've just finished 3 tracks for Ian Pace from Deep Purple, and he just sent me another song to do for him, and I'm working on some stuff for some people in New Zealand and Australia and Ireland. So and we're getting ready to go in the studio in about a week to do a new album with Susanna Hoffs, who was the singer in the Bangles, and she's doing so. Things are busy. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but more than anything, I'm just concerned for people's well-being.
Right.
It's been I've lost a number of people throughout this, and I have other friends that have survived, but they're long haulers on this and are dealing with a lot of health issues and stuff. So it's certainly nothing to be taken lightly by any means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to Deep Purple, I find that the album Burn is highly underrated.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get as much love as, like, say, the Machine Head, because of Smoke on the Water.
Yeah, no, they're great. I've always been a fan of Roger Glover and stuff, and we're actually supposed to, if nothing changes, the last gig we did last year with the immediate family, which has also occupied a huge part of this year for me, even though we haven't been able to tour or anything like that, but we've been in the studio working, and like you said in the intro, getting ready to release the new album, which we cut before the pandemic hit. But the last gig I played was a thing called the Rock Legends Cruise. We did that in February of last year. And it was with Nancy Wilson from Heart and Roger Daltrey and all these different artists on it. And the immediate family was on it. And now we're scheduled to do the one this coming February. And Deep Purple's going to be on it. So I've been talking to Ian about that. I said, it's going to be fun just to spend, a few days hanging out together with you guys and stuff. So, I'm hopeful about things, but we just don't know because we're in kind of such unknown territory with all of this, even though in terms of the medical side of it, it's not unknown, but we're certainly, I remember as a kid, like when the polio vaccine came out and tetanus and diphtheria and all these things. I mean, the first thing we did when we found out about vaccinations was got them. And all of a sudden now there's like this huge amount of people that think there's a conspiracy and all this. So it's putting us so far behind the 8 ball in terms of recovering from this. So I'm taking every day as a day. It's hard to make plans for the future when the plans are subject to people's safety.
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Because I know in the Lesbian Party for your album coming out soon, you said y'all are gonna have all people wear masks at the venue,
And they have to be vaccinated and everything.
Right. Yeah. I think that's very, very smart.
Yeah.
Who knows when this will go away, but hopefully pretty soon.
Yeah, well, we want it that way, and I think that's also the Grammy Museum has their own set of rules for all of this. So I'm looking forward to sitting on a stage because we're not going to actually physically be playing. What we're going to be on stage with they're going to be playing the album for the audience, and we're going to be sitting and talking about it and answering questions and everything, and hopefully we'll know by next week if we're going to be able to be doing a live stream of it too, which I will put up on social media and make the announcements on my YouTube channel and stuff like that. But we're just waiting right now to see whether or not that's going to be technically happening and all that. But fingers are crossed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that's possible. To get out and hear your album. So I heard in the previous interview that you are that the hospital knows you all too well. That you are never bored for your leisure time. You like to do yard work, among other things.
Yeah.
So what has been the worst accident that you've ever received or been a part of?
The worst accident?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's kind of hard, right?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've never really had, knock on, wood. I've never really had terrible accidents, but I've had, a number of, serious cuts and things like that. But I've never had to wear a cast or, do any have surgeries or anything like that. So I feel pretty fortunate that so far I've gotten through life fairly unscathed. But lots of like really stupid things, with the kind of stuff I do is like I'm getting ready to go do like a big gig and I'll end up going out doing some work in the yard and I'll get like a bougainvillea thorn like right in my fingertip right where I play, so that every note feels like somebody's stabbing you with an ice pick in your eye kind of thing. But so far I'm still doing pretty good. I'm still ambulatory at this old age and out, just pissing people off and kicking butt.
There we go, man. Yeah, because I haven't actually had a broken bone, and I don't know. I don't think I've ever had one, But I've had a few skull fractures, because I'm afraid of bees,
Mm,
I had to just go backwards down the stairs and then walk to the hospital. So
yeah,
I
that's
get more
scary.
headaches than I need. Oh yeah, that's very scary. But I get more headaches than I could care to,
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, but I'm doing fine right now. So
Good, man. I'm glad to hear that.
thank you, thank you. So with many string communities out there, many prefer different things from their strings. Sound, tone, toughness, and playability. Uh, as I know that, well, I want to ask you, do you still work with GHS strings?
Yeah.
And could you tell us what you look for when you are looking for strings, and why GHS was a perfect fit?
I've been with GHS for a very long time. Back when I was first starting, I for a while I used Pyramid Golds. I think they're out of Germany, and then I kind of in the late '60s went over to Roto Sound, which I thought were great strings. But the issue I had with Roto Sound, at least at that time, and I haven't checked them out in years, was there was a bit of an inconsistency in their manufacturing. So you might buy a set of strings and three of them are good and one of them would be dead. So you'd have to go get another set. And, it's the weirdest business. I guess there's a lot of things like this. So when you're just starting out, that's when you have to pay retail. And then suddenly when you're actually making money, then everybody wants to give you everything. So it's kind of like backwards. They should, give you strings to start out in and then make you pay for them as the more successful you get. I know that we have the Los Angeles Music Academy here in Pasadena where I live. And at one point, I gathered up box loads of strings and just took them over and gave them to the bass students over there and just said, don't hoard them, but, use them. So a number of years ago, I ended up trying GHS. And the thing I found out about that I liked about them is, first off, I'm not a fan of new strings. I really like when strings wear in. I don't look for that real brittle brightness that a new string has. But the thing I found with GHS was they're incredibly consistent in their manufacturing. And the minute I put them on, they just have a sound that really works for me. There's a tonality to them, a feel to the strings. Some strings have like a really kind of a weird texture to the surface of them that feels like almost like a bit of a sandpaper kind of a thing. And the GHS are really comfortable for me. But when I put I'm actually about to restring my main bass, my Frankenstein bass. And when I do it, I'm going to beat the crap out of those strings for a couple of days and just kind of wear them in.
Right.
But what I normally the strings I normally use are a super steel GHS super steels in a medium light. So the gauges I have are a 40, a 58, an 80, and a 102. And I really love 40. Anything bigger than a 40, because most strings seem to come with a 45 as a G string.
Right.
And I like to wiggle a bit in my playing and use vibrato. And the 40 really lends itself much more towards that. When I'm using my Dingwall bass, that's a completely other kind of situation because it's got fan fretting. And so the neck the string links are not standard. So I get my strings from Dingwall on that. But the GHS really works well. I've got that on my Warwick signature bass, and I like that a lot. It's really funny though. A dear friend of mine is Jonas Hellberg, who played with Mahavishnu Orchestra and all kinds of people, and he was a Warwick endorsee while I was over there in Germany too, along with Steve Bailey, and we formed a little band called Jostle. And he's got a line of strings I just saw an ad for it today on Facebook is where I saw it. So I'm curious to see what he's come up with, because he's a very, very anal guy about technical things in terms of the instruments and amps he's designed and things. So I'm real curious to see what his strings are like. But as of now, GHS is my go-to string. A long answer to a short question.
Oh, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. It's funny you mentioned Jonas Hellberg, because I had an interview with Anna Patan, and she had nothing good things to say about him. She just loves him to death, So
she's the best. She's wonderful. They're an amazing couple, and it's been fun to watch her musical journey take place, because I've known her now for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years, I think. And watching her when she was first working on her material and stuff, and all of a sudden to see things where she's really blossomed,
right,
is pretty great.
Yeah, because she's been a big supporter of our podcast.
Great.
We have nothing but great things to say about her. She's really, really nice. We've been out like about an hour and a half talking, and I just had a great time talking to her. But it's funny you mentioned the Frankenstein, your Frankenstein bass, because I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So I have been on this earth for 41 years now, and I've never seen a bass with the bridge all the way back of the bass and the position of your pickup. Could you explain like how you came about doing that to your bass, and did you look for like a specific style with that?
Well, what happened, that bass was really kind of an experimental accident. And it's funny that I call it Frankenstein, because it really was like body parts. But in reality, Frankenstein was the doctor, and then the monster was the other thing. So right. I call it Frankenstein. But what happened was, and I don't know how I ended up with it, but I somehow ended up with a 62 precision jazz bass neck. A 1962 precision neck. That I thought, this feels like a really good neck, but I need to do something with it. But there was no bass attached to it. It was just a neck. There was a company out here in Southern California, and this was back in the around 1973 or 4 when we did this. A company called Charvel that manufactured aftermarket bodies. They did a lot of stuff, but they had these aftermarket bass bodies, and they weren't that far from where I live. So I contacted them and went out to the factory, and I saw this big stack of precision bodies, all these really nice alder bodies sitting, these blanks. So I went through them. I kind of hung each one from a piece of wire and just tapped them, just to see what the resonance was like. And there was one of them that really had just this beautiful sound to it. So I bought that. Then I kind of the go-to place in Los Angeles back in those days was Westwood Music. And anytime you'd go there, you'd go in there, be like Jackson Browne or Ry Cooder, or, the guys from the Eagles. People would just hang out there because it was like a watering hole for everybody. And they had a room in back where guys could go jam and stuff. And it was Fred Wallake's store. But in the repair department, there was a guy named John Carruthers, and Carruthers is still a great luthier. But so I went and talked to him, and I showed him the neck and the body, and I said, let's build a bass out of this thing. And so we ended up, now I've always been a jazz bass. I like the jazz bass neck. I'm not a big fan of precision basses. And I had a 62 jazz bass. So what I did was I took my old bass in, and we made a template off the neck of that then stripped the frets out of the neck, that precision neck that I had, and we reshaped that neck into a jazz neck configuration.
Yeah.
Now, in doing that, then it came time to refret the bass. And I was walking around the shop and I was looking and I saw these spools of fret wire hanging on the wall. And I said, "What's this stuff?" And he goes, "That's mandolin wire."
Oh.
And he said, "That's the smallest fret wire there is." I said, "Let's use that." And he went, "Man, that'll wear out like overnight. There's no, not going to be good." I said, "I'll tell you what, let's do it. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll pay you for another refret." Uh, it turned out to be one of the best things I've ever done. Every single bass I have, all my signature basses, everything, all come with mandolin or the thinnest wire they can get. Because when you're playing, you can lighten up your touch, and it can almost feel like if you put a little bit of, pitch shift or something on it, you can make a fretted bass sound like a fretless bass pretty easily. It's got a beautiful growl to it.
Right.
And for chordal things, it's real accurate. But so we resolved the neck, and then that I was always used to a jazz bass. I decided to, the thing was hollowed out for a precision pickup down in the middle of the body, but I wanted to put pickups where the jazz pickups would have normally gone. We decided to go with two sets of EMG precision pickups. Now, this is when Rob just had started EMG, so these are the very first generation EMGs. But as I was looking at it, I thought, by the nature of the way a precision pickup is, you've got the one piece that goes under the G and the D, and one piece that goes under the A and the E, and they're offset. Well, I thought, when I looked at the way Fender had designed them, the G and the D half of the pickup would normally have been closest to the bridge, and the A and the E would have been closer to the neck. And I thought, just by the nature of the sonic of those strings, I would have reversed it and have the A and the E half closer to the bridge, just to add a little more clarity. And so we routed it out where jazz pickups would have gone, and then reversed the P pickups and put them in those positions. And then I still had the cavity in the middle of the bass where the original precision pickup would have gone. But we were running these 18 volts. You had two 9-volt batteries to run these pickups. So we stuck the 9 volts in that cavity, so we didn't have to route out anything else. And then the bridge on it is a Badass 2 is that model. So we put this thing together, and just the way the body lined up and everything lined up, we ended up with the bridge really way at the back of the body, almost right at the very edge of the curve of the heel of the bass. And then I got in a hold of Dave Borsoff, who has Hipshot, and it's actually got one of the first prototype Hipshot detuners on the E string. So it's all these pieces of things that were assembled. And the first time I was with John and we plugged it in, we just looked at each other and went,
Whoa.
"Wow."
This is amazing.
Because it could have sucked, you don't know. But it turned out to be the bass that I've used on probably 80 to 85% of everything I've recorded since about 1973 or 4, when we built the bass. Then the bass was absolutely just a clean piece of alder the whole time that I had it for years. Well, in 1981, the LA Dodgers won the World Series.
Right.
And we were asked to go in the studio and record We Are the Champions with the Big Blue Wrecking Crew. So we're in the studio, and this was like the day after the World Series, and these guys are like hammered, and they're just wanting to like do all these like bar songs and stuff, going, let's do Fannie Mae and Louie Louie and all this crap that we used to play like for fraternity parties. And we were having a ball. Well, at the end of the session, they were signing baseballs for all the musicians on. Jeff Porcaro was playing drums. And I mean, it was like a great lineup of players. And so I got a baseball and all that. And I said, "Hey, why don't you guys sign my bass?" And they went, "Really? Sign your bass?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So we got out some pens, and they signed, and they were the ones that popped my bass's cherry. And so they signed it. And then that was it for a little while. And then I was on the road with James. A couple more people had signed it at that point, but we were doing a gig with James Taylor and Rocky Blyer and Lynn Swan, who at that time were with the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. They were backstage at a gig and they saw the bass and they went, "Oh man, baseball players are pussies. You need football players," you know. So they signed the bass, and then it just went crazy. You know, I just had so many people signing, and I've, you know, and to have like Larry London and Jeff Porcaro and Carlos Vega, a lot of those guys are on it, and Linda Ronstadt, you know, Flaco Jimenez and Merle Haggard. But you know, it's cool. Like George Lucas signed it, and he said, "May the force be with you." And then right next to that, Peter Max, the great artist Peter Max, made a little Saturn. But the problem is, it's been my main bass, so I never clear coated it. So some people have been rubbed off, and others, you know, have been added. But I started another bass like that, which was a Yamaha that was built for me. That they were trying to build something like the Frankenstein, but it's a really good bass, but it's not Frankenstein. But it's black, and I did that with silver and gold markers. And then once it got really full, I clear coated it, so those are all protected. But I did a lot of old people on there. There's Merle, there's Bob Hope and Milton Berle and Debbie Reynolds and Mel Torme and Dick Van Dyke, and you know, all these people that I would end up doing a gig with them somehow. I would just have them sign it, and then I'd go shoot some clear over it. So they're fun. It's not so much the instruments; it's the history. To me, that's so meaningful. But Frankenstein's still my go-to main bass when I go to work.
So I guess it would be hard. Well, have you ever thought about like mass producing it, and like getting into like public hands? Or well, I guess it would be hard to do because it's like parts of other, you know.
Yeah, I think it would be. I mean, I know a couple of people that are making copies of it as like on their own. I had a guy show up when the Immediate Family played the Iridium in New York. There was a guy who showed up to show me his copy that he had made of Frankenstein, and it was really nice. And I have another friend named Ken who's up in like the Silicon Valley area in California, who's in the process of building one right now. And we end up like going on Skype, and I keep showing him the bass, and he's like taking notes and stuff like that. But the thing that to me makes it really special is, first off, I really labored to find that piece of wood on it. Also, those pickups ceased to exist years ago. That was the first generation. And one of the reasons that they stopped making them was they eat up 9-volt batteries like there's no tomorrow.
Okay.
Where if I'm like in a really heavy period, I'll go through a set of 9 volts a week on it. And I carry a voltmeter with me when I'm working. And I can notice a bit of a change in the tonality when a 9-volt hits about 8.5 or 8.6, because normally out of the box they're about 9.3. And most people don't want to be that anal about their batteries, but it's kind of like losing the space shuttle because of an O-ring. You know, it's got this little cheap thing in the base that to me, takes away some of the beauty of it. So I think it's that aged neck, and the body's old. It's never been coated or any of that makes it unique. Because I've had people for years saying to me, you know, have you ever thought of talking to Fender about maybe making, you know, a copy of this and making a signature one? And I've said, well, that would be weird because it's not a Fender bass. It looks like one. You know, it has a neck that sort of was once a Fender neck and stuff. So I think it'll just remain its unique little self, and people can go ahead and, you know, try to make their own versions of it. And I'm sure some of them will turn out really nice, but nothing's going to be like, there's players that have played it, and as soon as they play it, they just look at me and they go, holy crap, this thing's really good.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece of lumber.
That's amazing. I was talking to we had an interview with Judy Rodman, and well, okay, backtrack. I was on your YouTube channel, and I watched one where you took us through a studio.
Yeah.
And you took us all around the inside, and you told us all about it. Judy Rodman, who I interviewed, you probably know her. and she says 99% of the time they're not. The studio is not adequately set up just right. Do you find that to be the case? And if you do, have you had any like hard times recording in a studio that wasn't really well prepared?
Um, yeah, it really all kind of comes down to the tech support at the studio. You can buy the best gear in the world, but if you don't have people maintaining it, and or if you really haven't put the room together properly, you can go out and buy a bunch of stuff, but the sonics may not be good in the room because I mean you really need to have audio engineers that know ceiling angles and dead spots and all these different things that come into play. I know just recently I did a tour of United Studios in Hollywood because I was doing an album project there with this Lori Basilio, this Brazilian guitarist. She's just a monster. She's really great. So I got there early and did a walk through the studio over there, and it's really a great room. And if you've got a great engineer sitting behind the console, it's great. But at the end of the day, you can go into the best studio in the world, and if you don't have a good engineer, it's not going to be good. And I've gone into people's houses or garages with a great engineer and made great music.
Right.
So it really it really comes down to ears and all that stuff. It's not so much the equipment. It's like having the best bass or the best amp. I mean, some of the stuff I've recorded with, I bought at flea markets, for like $90, but it works perfect for what you need. And guys would go, "How could you play that thing?" I go, "Listen to it. It sounds great. It's really good." But it really does. I mean, the really great studios in town, really generally, you have no issues at. If you're working at Capitol Records or at East West, which originally was Western Recorders, or at United or Village Recorders or Sunset Sound, those rooms, they're really iconic studios that their history is so profound that they really do maintain them. Henson Studios, which was originally A&M Studios. I've never had issues. Usually, if you're going to have any kind of issues, it's kind of like the B-level studios where they really haven't spent the resources to really have it put together properly, and they don't necessarily have a great group of technicians maintaining the room. We used to have maybe more issues back in analog days when you were dealing with really having to align machines and dealing with a lot of the technical side of recording, where most stuff at this point is all computer, so that you're not really, but there's more and more, there's people really kind of having a desire to visit the old days. And so they're, a lot of those big studios still have, 16 and 24 track machines that are always maintained and they're ready to be used. And the older generation of engineers are the ones who really know that. I mean, it's kind of weird. You go through this period like in the 80s where it was all starting to go towards just plugins and stuff. And you had a new generation of engineers doing that. And then all of a sudden people would go, "I think I want to use live drums on this project." And the guy's sitting there going, "I've never mic'd a drum in my life.
Right.
I know how to plug in computer drums and all that. That's no problem." And all of a sudden, projects were calling some of the old engineers who were put out to pasture a little bit, and suddenly they were the guys that were working because people wanted to hear, amps mic'd and drums mic'd properly, and how do you really mic an acoustic piano and all that. So it's gone kind of full circle. That pendulum is always swinging back and forth, and it's when you catch it. But I've never really had major disasters. I've worked on some projects where there was maybe something really went down, and they would say, "Go out for a long lunch," instead of plowing through now. The first thing they would say is everybody cool tonight, or does anybody have anything after this? And if everybody says no, they would say, "Well, look, just come back in a couple hours," and they would get people to start doing technical work in the studio to fix whatever was going on. But generally, it's not an issue. It's they're pretty well maintained. And one thing, I was talking about strings and my bass. One thing I want to also acknowledge is the amp company that I've been working with for many, many years is called Euphonic Audio and EA amps, and they're based in New Jersey. And that I use basically the same rig with Phil Collins that I use with Lyle Lovett, that I used with James Taylor and Carole King on our reunion tour. When same rig I used with Toto. Their stuff is really great, and I love it. And I've got 3 different setups. I've got one for like the big gigs like those, and then I have a combo amp that I use in the studio. And then when I work with people like Judith Owen, where we're doing smaller venues, I have a little rig I can actually put in a shoulder bag, and it kicks ass. It's really good. So I've been really happy with those guys, and they're really a wonderful amp company. That's my go-to amp rig.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. My next one is okay.
Yeah.
So I see your beard, right?
Where?
Right. I don't know, man. Yeah. But how long have you been growing that out? Because I saw your pictures back in the '70s, and you had it started, right?
Yeah, I've actually had a beard since 19. I stopped. I haven't seen my upper lip since I got my high school diploma in 1966.
Wow. Yeah.
So I've had it a long time. The big difference is there's all those old pictures of it where it was all dark.
Yeah.
And then over the years it gets a little salt and pepper, and then the next thing you know, pepper's gone and you got a pile of salt. I know, but it's always funny because when I'm out and about, and then people yell ZZ Top, Oak Ridge Boys, Gandalf, and
Or
all.
or something, right?
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty funny, but I've it became a signature thing. It's nothing, and that I did fully intending to do, but it's just the way I've always been. And I was lucky. I kind of come from Eastern European Russian stock. And so I started shaving when I was really young, which worked out great for me because when I was like 14, 15 years old, summertime would come and I would grow like a little iron jaw and a mustache. I could go play adult clubs without being carded.
Oh, nice.
So I was making I was making the circuits of jazz clubs here in Los Angeles that were like adult, only adults could go into those places, and nobody ever gave me any hassle about it. So it kind of worked out in my favor.
Right. Yeah. The reason why I asked you that because your website is LelandSklarsBeard.com.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I had to do that because when I did the book, I was going to have to create a website. And so I went to get LelandSklar.com. Somebody owns it. I went to get LeeSklar.com. Somebody owns that. And I thought, hell, I'm not going to go to somebody and pay him a bunch of money for my name. So I sat and thought about it. And I said, I'm just going to make it LelandSklarsBeard.com. And that was available. So it worked out.
Well, I guess the reason why they bought it is hoping you would come and buy it from them. And I guess many people do nowadays.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, right. But I find that website amazing because you have a couple items on there for sale. One of them is the book, and I want to ask you about the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's called "Everybody Loves Me." Which started, and I find that kind of unique because inside the book you have everybody to you all.
Yeah, but it's a finger of love,
right? Yeah. So that was a guy asking, what was your idea going for a book in the first place, and why did you have everybody give you that lovely gesture?
Okay, I'll try to make it succinct here. When I was on the road with Phil Collins in 2004, we were doing the first Spinal Farewell tour. Now there was talk on that tour that Phil was going to retire at the end of the tour. He was kind of just done. I think he had a Genesis tour to do right after that, and then he was going to call it quits. Which he ended up doing up to a couple of years ago when he decided to come out of retirement, and we did the Not Dead Yet tour. But when we were doing the tour in 2004, they had gotten me a bass tech for the tour. Now, normally I've really never had techs on the road. I like doing my own gear and everything. And this guy came super qualified, and I didn't have much for him to do. So we would joke around all the time. He would just look at me and he'd go, what do you need? And I go, nothing. So he would be helping like the percussionist or the singers or different people. I mean, he helped me, but it wasn't, I think he came from a tour where there was a bass player who had like 10 basses that he wanted new strings every day and all that kind of stuff. So he was pumped and ready to work. So at the end of the tour, the thought of Phil retiring, I went, man, we had a crew from people all over the world, and the band was kind of from everywhere. And I thought, I may never see a lot of these people again if this is actually the end. So I decided just to take a picture of everybody and make a little folder in my computer, just as for my memories. Well, as luck would have it, the very first person I go up to was Steve, my bass tech, and he's working on his laptop. And I said, hey, Steve, give me a smile. And he, without stopping typing, he just went. And I took the picture and I looked at it and I went, ooh, this is actually pretty cool. So I went and I got Phil and his manager. I got everybody in the band, everybody in the crew, truck drivers, bus drivers. And I had about 150 people. Let me shut that phone off here. Sorry. I ended up with about 150 pictures, and I tucked it away, just put it all away. And it was all people flipping me off. Then a couple of years later, I did the first time I went out on the road with Toto. And I thought that was pretty cool with Phil's thing. So I got, Luke and everybody in the band to flip me off on that one. And it got up to then about 250 pictures. And when it gets into that kind of numbers, it becomes something different. It's a different kind of collection. Right. So everywhere I went then, I was just telling people, hey, come on, flip me off. I'd be on an airplane and get the whole compartment to flip me off on the plane or whatever. On sessions, as I would meet people in different locations and so. And as time went on, the next thing I know, I had over 12,000 photographs of people. Wow. And I was at a party, kind of a backyard get together here in Pasadena. There's a really world-renowned artist who lives here named Kenton Nelson. And he has these get-togethers with a bunch of different people he finds interesting in his backyard. And so I went over there, and there was a guy named Blue. His nickname is Blue Tremarchi. And he has a company called Art Alliance, and they do all kinds of artwork and different things. And he and I sat and talked that evening, and I told him about the pictures, and he said, do a book. Everybody's bugged you to do this book forever, but you don't have time. But we had just hit the pandemic at this point. And all of a sudden he said, you got time, let's do it. And I gave him a hard drive with all the pictures on it. And we both started going through it, just kind of honing down, because I loved all the pictures. So it was really hard to break 12,000 pictures down to 6,000 pictures. But he helped me do the whole layout with the book, and it was actually his idea for the title. I had a couple of other ideas, and he goes, "How about Everybody Loves Me?" And I went, "Okay, let's do it." And so it kind of took on a life of its own. And but we spent a lot of time. I mean, we put a lot of effort into this book. The cover, that padded cover. Even the box that it's delivered in was specially made for this, and the quality of the paper and ink and stuff in it. Even doing, like, when you open the book, those first thing you see before the book starts, it could have been white paper, but we filled it with all the the pictures that weren't actually in the book. So it's been a hell of a journey, and I'm self-published, so I'm doing everything myself. And it's been hard work, I assure you. And I've still got a warehouse with a mountain of books in it. And actually, in about, I don't know, this is a new world to me, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with NFTs, the non-fungible tokens. Yeah. Well, the book is about to become trading cards, NFTs. And we're a couple of weeks from releasing that. So, I'm constantly looking at all kinds of new things to do with it. But the book was a ball, and I did it intentionally where I didn't have like a section of celebrities and this and that. To me, it's a book about humanity.
Everything, right.
And for me, there's a few ways of doing this. Fine. That's it. There's infinite ways of looking at a face when somebody does it. And to me, the thing I love in the book is just looking at expressions on people's faces when you say, come on, flip me off. And you get the entire cross section of humanity, from people that are hiding to people that are, yeah, it's really fun to me. Everybody who's gotten it just goes, I love this book. I keep it on my coffee table, and when people come over, they're all going crazy looking through it and stuff. So it's been a real fun project. It was a lot of work and a lot of effort to do this, but I'm very, very proud of what we came up with. It's a goofy subject matter, but it's nothing that there's nothing angry or mean spirited about it at all, because everybody was just, after they realized what was going on, where it's like totally into it. And I've got everybody from a nun in there to one of the very last pictures in the book was my junior high school music teacher who turned me on to bass, and I hooked up with him a few years back before he passed away from cancer, and I got a shot of him, and I wanted to honor him in the book because he gave me an amazing direction in my life.
Yeah. I was looking through it, and one picture stood out, which to me the most is I'm so happy that you got a picture of the I think it was Highwayman,
Yeah, with Willie and Merle and Chris.
yeah, before Merle went away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was backstage at the Grammy Awards. We were performing, and they brought in Blake Shelton to fill in the fourth seat, but
right.
to me,
Right.
he wouldn't be in that picture. Those were the guys.
Oh yeah,
And I have individual shots of all of them. I've got individual shots of Willie and Merle and Chris, because I've known them all forever, and I've worked with them individually. But when the three of them are backstage, I just went, dudes, come on, and got them. And the thing that's cool on that page, when you're looking at that, the opposite page to that is my parents.
right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of, I like having my folks out there with those maniacs,
It
because
goes.
my folks were as
Oh,
nuts as they are.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the first time I heard about the book, we interviewed Scott Page from
Yeah.
54, and he couldn't wait to tell me about your book, and I'm like, oh, I have to get it out. This is so amazing,
Yeah, Scotty really enjoys it, and Scott's well represented in it.
Yeah, and he also gave us information about NFT stuff.
Yeah,
We really learned from him.
It's pretty exciting. I mean, it's a strange world that we've entered into with this virtual world, but the artwork that was available on the book site, my drawings and paintings, they're gonna also be NFTs. And then I've got the T-shirts with my beard on them and all that kind of stuff going on. So I was never. I laugh about it. I go, I was never really cut out for retail. I'm just a bass player. I just like going touring and recording. So all of a sudden, all that was taken away. So I had to look at options, and between that and the YouTube and all that stuff, it's been a incredibly busy year.
Yeah. One more question about the book.
Yeah.
What kind of padding is the cover? Because I find it very enlightening that with a different fabric, I guess you would call it, for the cover.
I'm not sure. I mean, this was something that Blue showed me in his office. He had another book that had this kind of a cover on it, and I'm not sure exactly how this thing is made or anything, but it's a nice book to hold. I mean, it's really cushy and stuff, and I really loved it, because I thought, if this was probably the only book I'm ever going to do in my life, and if I'm going to do one, just do it as good as you can. I mean, it's not like I had monks doing an illuminated manuscript, or in gold leaf and stuff. But for what it is, I think this is as good a book as I could have ever made, and it's a big ass book. It weighs 6 pounds. It's not like a pamphlet or little. So it's a handful. But it's just. To me, it's there because we're in really dark times, and I wanted to have something that was fun for people.
Yeah, we all need something that's fun in your life now. You mentioned a shirt. You can buy the shirt at LelandSklarsBeer.com.
Yeah, it's if you go to LelandSklarsBeard.com, it's got the book, it's got these T-shirts
Shirt.
that are really good quality shirts with. But it looks like you're wearing my beard from here down on it. And I get all these guys that bought it and they're showing me at their gigs, wearing it and stuff. And then when I was in college, I was an art major, so I've got drawings and paintings in there that we've done like really museum quality limited edition prints of. And if anybody wants those, I've shipped a bunch of those, and people are sending me pictures of them framed in their houses and stuff. So it's pretty thrilling.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about, man. You are on the ball with the transition. um, so the website has various paintings of subjects that range from portraits to musicians to collages.
Yeah.
So what is your painting, and how does music affect your painting, or the
I think I think when you're dealing with the arts, I think it all affects each other. It's really when you get into that part of your brain, it's a pretty magical place to visit. And so uh, um, I think it all affects each other. Art and music and all of the arts really they tend to come together like that, and it's just creative juices
right?
more than anything.
So let's take a time machine back in time.
Okay.
When did you first hear?
Oh, my beard's gone.
Oh no! So right, I just got it. Thank you. You're right. Welcome. It took me a while, but I got it right. So when did you first hear music, and like how did it stand out to you?
I was fortunate. I think I grew up in a household where music was a big part of it, not so much from the standpoint of playing, because my mom could play a little piano and my dad could kind of honk a few notes on a saxophone that would make me cry.
Yeah.
But they had a really extensive and eclectic record collection. So, they had an old Magnavox, hi-fi, and we would just listen and have music playing all the time, from classical to contemporary of the period, to jazz, and you sort of name it, and it was there. And so I feel really fortunate that I was surrounded with a musical environment. And the thing that actually got me to be involved in music was, as a kid, there was a pianist named Liberace, who was, he was kind of like, he became what Elton wished he could have been in his life. He was like one of the biggest stars of Vegas. He would come out in all these outfits and all this. But when he had his TV show, when I was a little kid, it was just him at the piano in a tuxedo with a candelabra and just playing music and telling stories and stuff. And I used to sit with my parents and watch that show, and I became totally enamored with piano at that point. And we had a piano in the house. And by the time I was 5, I was studying piano. And I was kind of the proverbial sort of child prodigy with it. By the time I was about 8 years old, I had won awards from the Hollywood Bowl Association and different things like that. So when I went into junior high school, when I was 12 years old, I kind of assumed I'd be the piano player, because that's what I'd been groomed for. And the gentleman who's the last page of my book, he said, "We have a lot of piano players. We need a string bass player." And I said, I kind of really didn't even know what he was talking about. I mean, I knew piano. I mean, my world was immersed in piano. And he pulled out an old K upright from the back room, this blonde bass, and showed me how to hold it. And I plucked one note on it and felt that vibration run through me. And I just looked at him, I said, "Let's do it." And I stopped piano at that point and just focused on bass. And that became the rest of my life.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Once again, I was on your YouTube channel, and I was so invested in one of the videos you talked about Dolly Parton. I think you posted it last week.
I did it actually yesterday. yesterday.
Yesterday,
Yeah.
yesterday. But I wanted to ask you this question because in there you said you would love to work with her again, you know, and I and so looking back at all the artists you worked with ever, can you give me 3 artists you would drop everything right now and just go work with them without question?
Um, well, certainly, I love my relationship with Phil Collins. If Phil wanted to go out, I would be out working with Phil like at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
I haven't worked with James Taylor or Jackson Brown, who are both out on the road right now. I haven't worked with James since we did the Troubadour reunion tour with Carole King a while back. But either of those guys, I love their music. It was great to play with them. And I had the greatest time playing with Toto. I mean, I would jump back into that one again. But it's really hard to say because there's been so many thousands of artists, and most of them I feel very, I'm not going to say blessed. I feel fortunate that I've worked with so many great people during the course of my career that almost any of them, if they called me up to do something, I would jump at it because I really enjoyed working with them. So it's not like a few people are standouts because we we took it to another level. It's like I love playing with Lyle Lovett, and he just called me and asked me if I would do his summer tour next year.
Nice.
And I'm holding off on him at this point only because we're still not sure what's going to happen with the immediate family, and everything's kind of predicated on that. If we're not working, then I'm going to go out with Lyle, for the summer. But everybody's is special and unique in their own way musically, so it's always really great to get involved with them. If we could have put our band Barefoot Servants back together that we had in the 90s, I would do that in a second. It was one of the most enjoyable bands I've ever experienced, with John Butcher, who is to me is one of the great rock and roll singer guitar players, and Ben Schultz and Ray Brinker. We did 2 albums together with Barefoot Servants. But right now my focus really is with the immediate family. And we've got the album coming out, and there was that documentary movie, The Wrecking Crew. Well, Denny Tedesco, who made that movie, is making a movie about us, and it's actually being edited right now. We're probably about a month away from seeing a rough cut of the movie, and it should be out early next year. And during the pandemic, I mean, we've got this new album coming out on the 27th. Well, during the pandemic, we went back into Jackson Brown's studio and we cut another album. So we got an album ready for when the release of the movie comes, and we'll have another album coming out then too. So there's a lot of stuff going on. The biggest drag, and it's not a personal thing, it's a drag for every kind of musician or any human being I know, was that for us, after all these years of being the guys that were supporting acts, there was the artist and then we were the band that played with them. Now we're finally the artist, and we managed to have it just the time where everything goes down the crapper, and we can't go on the road and we can't promote and we can't do. So at this point, we're now just we've got gigs booked starting in November, on the West Coast first and then the East Coast. And we're just keeping our fingers crossed that things don't get really terrible and dark again, and those gigs get lost. But the most important thing right now is people's safety. And I don't want to see us I mean, we created our little bubble. Everybody got their shots in the band. So we've been rehearsing and playing together. We're ready to go. But when I see these things like Lollapalooza, or you see like Sturgis and all these things, you go, man, as long as people are going to act like that, I don't know when this is ever going to end, because they're all just talking about all this stuff I've talked about this a few times where I go, there's people that say to me, I'm not going to get vaccinated because I don't know what's in it. I don't trust it. And I look at them and I go, I knew you when you were doing heroin, when you were doing blow, when you were, if somebody came up and gave you a handful of pills, you'd eat them all without even thinking about it. Then you'd get drunk and go to McDonald's. But
Right.
now you're concerned about what's in something. I go, really, give me a break.
Yeah.
But we're all at the mercy of that until we can get this behind us and we can start opening up and doing things. I mean, Genesis is supposed to be starting a big tour, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do it or not. It starts in Europe, but Europe keeps getting shut down again. And
Yeah.
I've been working on an album with a guy named Brett McKenzie in New Zealand. There's a group called Flight of the Conchords in New Zealand. They're like one of the biggest acts. It's two guys, and they're like a comedy act, but they're also a musical act. And he said, man, the minute COVID hit New Zealand, the prime minister shut New Zealand down. And it's like if they're just closing the borders of New Zealand for this week because one case appeared.
Oh.
And they, I mean, they're, it's an island and there's a small population compared to America and places, but still they've approached it from a standpoint of like really acting on it all. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and there's very few cases down there of it, so for the most part, life is kind of still normal for them. They haven't really had to close all the restaurants and music venues and all that, but it's a different mindset.
Yeah.
So
Nice. So we have two more questions for you. If
sure,
you don't...
anything you want.
Cool. Thank you for this. So I've been listening to you all my life, and I didn't realize it until recently. But you worked on some of the greatest TV show themes ever. Some examples was the 18, Magna P.I., Alf, The Greatest American Hero, and others to name. So was the theme already written when you were called to record the research, or did you work with the composer on them?
Most of the TV stuff, like film, like movies, is all written out in advance. Now, what usually happens with me, like all those TV shows, most of that was composed by Mike Post, and a lot of that was when his partner Pete Carpenter was still alive. And I started with the Rockford Files was the first show, and then Simon and Simon and A-Team and Hill Street Blues and all those shows. What would happen, they would have the stuff written out, but then they would say, kind of add your personality to it, because notes are very specific, but there's nuances that are nebulous. And so Mike would always just say, I mean, this is the outline. This is what it has to be to fit and do what it's going to do within the confines of the show. But he said, if you feel like throwing a little something in or some glisses or things like that, feel free to do it. And if he didn't dig it, he would just say so. I mean, I always tell people, I said, my mantra kind of is everything I do is etched in mud. Because if I'm playing something and somebody wants to hear something different, tell me. I'm happy to make changes. I don't know everything. I always appreciate it when I'm like working on an album project or something, and I come up with a part and somebody goes, "Could you try this?" And I go, "Oh, that's great. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's a really cool idea." And I tend to try to log those things away for maybe I'll find myself in a similar groove or situation at another point and go, and I'll draw on that thing. But film is even a little more restrictive because most of that, you're really looking at specific cuts and everything's, pretty methodically put together. But I'm happy to do those dates. Boy, there's nothing like not having to think.
Right.
Like you just sit down and there it is in front of you. You just have to be a good reader. And I've since I started piano at 5, I've always been a good reader. So that's not an issue for me.
Right. So our last question for you is
Yeah.
this podcast is called When Words Fail, Music Speaks, right? And that can't be further from the truth. So is there any song that you can think of right now that speaks to you and moves you in such a way that you can't explain it how it makes you feel to anybody else?
Oh God. I think that's kind of one of the hardest things in terms of music. I think that's one of the hardest things because music and the arts are so subjective that it's really hard. I mean, I always think about this, like you go to an art museum and you could be standing in front of a painting and the person on your left is crying. They're so moved by it. And the person on your right's going, what a piece of crap.
Right.
and they're both absolutely right.
Right.
And with music, to verbalize music, I find very hard. It's one thing because when you're listening to it, you're in a different headspace. There's a different part of your body and your mind that are working. But if you try to actually explain how you're feeling, the other people might not quite understand it the way you are. It's hard to put words to those kind of feelings because they really are pretty esoteric. It's a thing. So hard to say that one. It's a good question, but really hard to answer.
Yeah, because music moves people in so many ways, and it's different for everybody. Because
Yeah.
music does speak, and that's true for everything, So
Well, you find yourself like nowadays. I mean, I find a lot of, especially like if I'm dealing with like a lot of people that are they're my age and maybe 10 years younger or something, that they sit there and they go, "Oh man, all this new music is just crap, man. It's not like mine when I was a kid." And I kind of look at them, I go, "There's a lot of great music now. You just have to go find it. And there was a lot of crap when we were kids. I mean, that's the whole thing, that they've now gotten rid of all the memories, and they've only honed in on those few things that they remember from those days. And when they hear them, suddenly they're like teenagers or in their 20s again, and they're comfortable. But I go, man, there are so many fine young artists coming along. My only issues really with music really tends to be more on the music business side, where you can make great music, but what happens to it after you've made it? Getting people to discover it, to hear it. Because in the old days, um, yeah, you were signed to labels and the like, and you kind of knew you were going to get screwed a bit by in the whole process. But they had ways of getting you on the radio, getting airplay, getting gigs, doing all this stuff. Where now there's so many fine artists out there that just finding opportunity to show their music is hard. I used to go into clubs and sit and jam. I mean, anybody wants to play in a club, I think now has to pay to play. They're
right.
not making any money. So it's a tough time. I never want to discourage new artists from pursuing this, but it's a tough slog to do this. I mean, the odds are stacked really against you. But I always equate it to like, say there's a Powerball going on, and the odds against you winning is like 175 million to 1. But the next day on TV, they've had the Powerball drawing, and there's some knucklehead with this big cardboard check, and they've won. So somebody in this business is going to prevail and is going to have success and all that. It's just the odds really are more inclined to say you're not going to make it at this end. You should, I always say, just enjoy it. And I've done lots of albums with people that have ended up doing things in other careers, but they've come back to do music, as just something. Maybe they've made enough money where they can kind of self-finance going in the studio for a couple of days and actually committing to tape or whatever, something they've been passionate about their whole lives, but not successful. Because I've done records with people that are oral reconstructive surgeons and own medical supply companies. I had one guy I worked on an album with, and I asked him what he normally did, and he and his brother own Skechers shoes. And so there's all kinds of things that are going on. To me, this is like it's a fascinating world in music. It's a matter of really going in with your eyes wide open, and not everything is American Idol and The Voice, because I've worked with a lot of those people who have won those shows, and some of them are really good artists, but a lot of them have never experienced, they've never, paid the dues, as we always say, of playing all the crappy gigs that you played during your life to hone your skills and to try to kind of create your sound and all that. They've just have maybe an innate ability that's pretty good, but a lot of them don't handle the what happens afterwards very well, because they've gone from loading dock to star,
Right.
and nowhere in between.
Well, for every all the listeners who want to want more of Leland stuff, you can go to LelandSklar'sBeard.com, or you can find him on Twitter under Leland Sklar and on YouTube under Leland Sklar.
Yeah, please come. The YouTube channels where I've today, I think, was my 670th video. That I have not missed a day since March of last year. Today I was showing stuff I did with Julio Iglesias, and but the thing is, in the confines of my YouTube channel, there's also a clubhouse you can join, and that's where I do 2 live streams a month, and do a one-on-one day where I do Skype and FaceTimes with people who sign up on that. And in the clubhouse, there's also a gift store. So there's like a bunch of different kinds of t-shirts and mugs and all that kind of stuff there. So it's a lot of fun too, a lot of people. So that's, just go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. And there's a backlog. I mean, there's so much information and music on that. It's really turned into a passion with me doing this.
So we just wanted to say thank you very much for coming on, sir. And this was really an honor for me to talk to you today. And I hope we can be friends afterwards.
Oh, absolutely. No, anytime. If you ever, how could I not dig a show where the host hat matches the background of your screen?
Yes.
I mean, Jesus, you are so cool. It's just ridiculous. I mean, as close as I am, is I got a white beard and I've got some white trim in the background on the wall. You've got it down completely. So, anytime.
I'm still learning, sir. And all the internet has a new business. So, yeah, so we really do. Honestly, thank you very much for coming on. And I hope to have you back sometime soon.
Anytime you want, I'll be happy to come back and visit with you.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, James, you take care and stay safe.
You too, man. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.